day, as a matter of fact. And we made it. We made it to the end of the week, and it's an exciting time. It's not exciting just because it's Friday, though. It's exciting for a number of reasons, because it's time to act like you know. So, first of all, let me just say thank you for joining. It's your girl, Felicia. If this is your first time here, welcome. Welcome. Don't make it your last. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all the things. If you are not new here, welcome back. And this video is for people who are wondering, why do I feel so different? Why do I feel so almost out of sorts? Like, you just really don't feel like you're in the same vibe with people, right? And it's because you're on a totally different frequency. This will explain it all. And hopefully, prayerfully, it's going to give you some tips to help you move into the next level, right? Because once you realize what your own vibe is, once you realize where it is that you stand with what you're trying to do, it explains everything. Because a lot of times we're walking around and we're trying to force ourselves to fit into everybody else's vibe, what everybody else has going on, you know. But once you realize that you're on a totally different frequency, you're just on a totally different vibe, your mindset is different, you're thinking different, you're living different, you start to see things differently. Not only do you start to see things differently, you start to move differently. You start to move differently because now you know exactly what your moves are supposed to be. And it's kind of hard to plan when you really don't know what playing field you need to be planning in. And what is it that they always say? Failure to plan is just like planning to fail. But once you know, for sure, you're on a totally different frequency than most of the people that you come in contact with every day. And that's fine. That is fine. That is okay. But you've got to act like you know. You've got to act like you know for a fact that you're on a different playing field, because then you can start looking for the things that match what it is that your vibe is, your frequency is, where you're supposed to be, where you're going, where you're headed. You know, everybody is not necessarily meant to be in that same, on that same level, right? And that's okay too. That's okay too. But not recognizing what frequency you're on can cause big problems for you, because, you know, if you're walking around and you're frustrated, like, okay, why doesn't any of this feel right? Why doesn't any of this feel good? Why doesn't any of this feel, and not necessarily easy, because it's not always easy, right? But why doesn't it feel like I fit into this right here? It's because you're on a totally different frequency. You have jumped into a whole new level of consciousness, really. You know, if you think about it, because it's mindset. It's mindset. And if everybody around you is in the same mindset, doing the same old thing, around, you know, just the same old habits, just the same everything, but you're not, you begin to feel like an outsider. And again, that's okay, because a lot of times when people feel like an outsider, or they don't feel like they fit, it bothers them. It bothers them. It enhances your, maybe the chances of you feeling bad or feeling depressed or what have you. But once you realize, wait a minute, it's okay. It's okay that you're different. It's okay that you've got a totally different vibe. It's okay that your mindset is not like the average person. It is totally okay. Once you realize that you are exactly where you are supposed to be, because here's the thing, nothing happens that isn't supposed to happen. Everything happens for a reason, and everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. So if you end up in a place where you feel like you are totally different and your vibe is totally different, it's not that your vibe is off, and it's really not that their vibe is off either. It's just that they're not the same. They're not the same. And realizing that you are on a totally different frequency, it's time to act like you know. Because once you act like you know, then everything else that you want starts to show up, and it starts to appear, because you're walking in your purpose. You're walking in your vibe. You're walking in your blessings. You're not trying to fit into what somebody else's blessings are. And a lot of times that's what happens. We try to fit into what somebody else's blessings are. And that's not our place. That's not our job. That's not where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to recognize where our blessings lie, what our frequency is, what our vibe is. We're supposed to realize what our chosen purpose is. And once we realize that, you can walk in confidence and not walk on eggshells. Because if you're a person who has been walking into the room and you've been either walking on eggshells, maybe hiding who you really are, not really revealing your true self. You don't really want people to know how different you are. You don't want to reveal your idiosyncrasies and stuff like that. You don't want people to look at you like you're eccentric. You don't want people to feel like maybe, you don't want people to feel like you're ungrateful for the chance to be in the room, because you are grateful, but at the same time, you know that you're destined for something way bigger. You know that you're destined for something way more purposeful than what's going on in that room at that particular time. You know that you're not meant to be on this short leash of life. You know that, hey, I actually feel in the core of my soul that I have the entire world at my fingertips. And you know why you feel like that? Because you do. You do have the entire world at your fingertips. And so acting like you know that, and that doesn't mean that you act like you're better than anybody else, because just because you're different, just because your vibe is different, just because your frequency is different, that doesn't equal superiority. That's why we're seeing a whole lot of crap. And I'll leave it like that. That's why we're seeing a whole lot of crap on a higher level when it comes to government and different things. And you've got the elite doing this and that and that. Because they have now, what I will say is they have realized what frequency they are on, but they use it to be superior. That's not what you're supposed to be using that for. You're supposed to use it for progress. You're supposed to use it for purpose. You're supposed to use it to put, take that pain and turn it into passion. You're supposed to motivate other people. You're supposed to help other people with it, be a good example, be a role model for other people. You're not supposed to use that to put yourself in a superior position. Now, you are supposed to use it to put yourself in a better position than what you're in, but not necessarily be superior to other people. And I think that's where we see, when people rise up to become oligarchs and all this other stuff, and, you've got the have more people and you've got the less than people, because A, they have realized what frequency they are on, but B, they're using it the wrong way. They're using it to be superior. That's not what this is about. What it's about is knowing exactly what your vibe is, what your frequency is, what you're meant to do, how you are meant to live, and how you are purposefully meant to walk on this earth, and what impact you're supposed to leave for other people. So realizing that you're on a whole nother frequency and that you're on a whole nother vibe is not necessarily for you to isolate yourself from everybody else and take on a superior stance. It's just you're supposed to be taking on a stance of being sure, being positive, being confident in knowing that your life has a purpose and that you're meant to do something more. And hey, we're not knocking those everyday activities. We are not knocking people living the same cycle over and over and over and over again. We're not knocking that, because if that's what you like, we love it, right? You like it, we love it. But realizing that there's something more for you is so important. It is so important. And not only just realizing it, not just realizing that there's something else for you, but acting on it. Acting on it and using it to be a good example for other people out there who are still stuck trying to figure out why they feel so different. Because trust me, there's a lot of people out here. There are a lot of people out here, I mean a whole lot, who are chosen and destined for something different. But they're stuck trying to figure out how to get in that different lane because they're so focused on the fact that they're not like everybody else, if that makes sense. You know, we get stuck in the comparison trap. Instead of using what's different about us, instead of using what we know is not the same to our advantage, instead of using that being different, being chosen for something else, instead of using that to really elevate, sometimes you get stuck perseverating on the fact that you are different and you're trying to figure out how you can fit in. You're looking at everybody else that's in the box and you're like, how can I fit into the box? Because actually life has done a really, really good job at making that box look normal. And for most people it is. For most people that box is normal, because the way life is set up right now, it keeps everything going the way that it is. And it's dependent on most people staying in that box. But for those of you who know, and I mean, you know that you're different. You know that you're chosen for something else. You know that there is a bigger, wider world out there. You know that really the life you're leading should be much easier. You know that it should be. And when I say easier, I don't mean that it's just, easy to get to it. But you know that once you do get to whatever that goal is, that life will be easier. It's a lot of work. And it's a lot of work climbing up out of that box, because everything around you says that you should stay in that box. Everything around you says, no, girl, don't climb out. Stay here with us. Don't think different. Be here and be miserable with us. Don't climb out of this box. Stay here and barely make ends meet with us. Don't climb out of that box. Stay here and be exhausted at the end of the day like we are. Be so exhausted that you can't really enjoy your life. Everything is set up for you to stay there. But you can't. You can't. You're different. You know that you're different. You're on a totally different frequency. You're on a totally different vibe. And it's time to act like it. It's not only time to act like it, but it's time to move like it. Because once you realize what vibe you're on and what frequency you're on and all of those things, then you can begin to move in purposefully. Purposefully. Because again, like I said before, failing to plan is just like planning to fail. So if you're wondering why you're not getting where it is that you want to get to, it's because you got a totally different vibe. One of the reasons anyway. You've got a totally different vibe. You're on a totally different frequency. Your mindset is totally different than the people that you exist around. And you're not necessarily recognizing that. And if you are recognizing it, instead of capitalizing off of being different, figuring out how to monetize being different, figuring out how to monetize your different vibe, your different frequency, you're focused on, how do I stay inside the box? How do I stay inside the box with them? Because I want to be accepted. I want to be accepted in this box that they're in. Because when you're not in the box that they're in, they're looking at you like you're weird. And in actuality, it's okay. It's okay to be the weird one. Because the weird ones, the different ones, they are the ones who actually make it out here. They are the ones who become the Steve Jobs and the Jeff Bezos and the other people. They are the ones who are able to call the shots in their lives. They are the ones who are calling the shots in your life, believe it or not. Because if you think about it, the stuff that we order, everything that we buy, the people that we work for, the hotels that we stay in, our whole financial system, everything is built by those people who realized that their frequency was different. They realized that their vibe was different. They realized that they were weird for a reason, and they capitalized off of it. They made it into something. They monetized it, and they became those billionaires who now run the world. And so we have to realize that yes, we're not at billionaire status. We're not at millionaire status. Some people are not even at thousandaire status, but you do have the benefit of being different. You do have the benefit of outside of the box thinking. You do have the benefit of something at your core. Something at your core is vibing on a whole new level. Something at your core is totally different from most of the people that you are around. Now, it's okay that you can kind of stay in that environment, but you can't act like you know how they say you can be in the world but not of the world? That's what that means. That is what that means. We spend a lot of time focusing on maybe the religion piece of it and not the rationale piece of it. The rationale piece of it is, yes, you're in this world, you're on this job, you're in this crowd of people, you're in this environment, you're in this city, or you're in this community, but your mind, your heart, your desires are on a totally different stratosphere. Once you come to terms with the fact that you are on a totally different stratosphere as far as your thinking is concerned, then you can start moving in a better and more purposeful way, and not moving the same way you see everybody else moving every day. Because if you think about it, if you're watching them every day, they're not happy. They would rather be free. They would rather be living a life of not necessarily luxury, but maybe one of leisure, right? And it's so hard to crawl out of that box because, again, we're programmed to stay in it. We're programmed to stay in it. So, step number one, Embrace and recognize the fact that you are on a totally different frequency. And then start walking in it. Start walking in it and watch how things change in your life. All right? So that's my Friday motivation for you this morning. I love you guys. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out. Recognize that you're different. Embrace it and start walking in that different energy. All right? And it'll catch on. It'll catch on. All right. Talk to you later. Love you guys. Have an amazing day.